Yesterday in our group, we talked about this phrase, low effort male. I was actually having a conversation with Heather Heidi when we were planning for an upcoming Unmasking Shame workshop. And I've heard her use this phrase a few times. Every time, I'll be honest with you, though, it bumps up to something in me. And usually when I have a kind of initial reaction or gut reaction to something, it is my body signaling me that there's something here for you. There's something to pay attention to. And in an effort to figure out what that something is, I figured I should just start talking about it. And so I brought it up in my therapy group that I run on Tuesday evenings, and just kind of threw the phrase out there. And what was interesting was that kind of similar reaction that I had, even though I didn't verbalize it. Everything that was said in the group was kind of something that I had felt or I had thought. Almost like an initial pushback on that term, like that doesn't describe me, that isn't an accurate description, like wanting to change the description to be more accurate, when really in reality it's to change it, to soften it. And as we talked about it in the group, what started to happen was really interesting. Was a lot of the guys in the group started to look at themselves and really acknowledge the ways in which not just low effort, but really singular effort. That the effort, when applied, a lot of conditions have to be met. And maybe not a lot, actually. Maybe one condition has to be met, that it has to serve myself. So if it serves me, and I see that it serves me in a way that I'm accepting of, then I will extend effort. Now, I love language. I love the meaning behind words, and I love debating those meanings behind words. I get a lot of energy behind it. Maybe I waste my time sometimes, which I can admit is probably the case. However, I don't think that's an accurate description of what effort actually means, especially in the context of relationships. So in the group, we went around and I asked a question of like, what's something that your wife values that you don't share the same value of? What I was trying to elicit was a conversation around like, what are the things that, another person appreciates that maybe you appreciate differently or don't appreciate at all? Something that I know in my relationship with my wife, our value of time is very different. I use this example a lot. If I were to throw myself a birthday party, there'd probably be no less than 10 to 15 people there. Now for me and my circle, it's a lot of people. And so I'd want a big party. I'd want my friends there. Maybe even would want some family members there. I'd want not a lot of kids there. Maybe no kids at all. If it's like really the perfect birthday party, I wanted just time with other adults and just hanging out and having fun, enjoying a good time. That would be the birthday party that I would want. My wife, on the other hand, if she were to plan a birthday party for herself, honestly, I think I could say this with relative confidence. She would probably prefer to have an entire night at home with just our family, with no interruptions, nothing on the schedule. And that would be what she would want to celebrate. Now, I love those differences between us. I think it also can create a lot of friction in relationships, especially if you have a person in the relationship that would kind of fit in that category of low effort male, that person that only makes effort if it benefits them. So for a long time in my life, I would describe myself as a really low effort male, that the times that I moved towards things were only if they served me and my agenda, my values, what I wanted. Very selfish. Now, I value what my wife values in so much as that I know she loves it. Therefore, I want her to get and have and receive the things that she loves. And I want to be someone who can give that to her. Not in an exchange for anything, simply because like I love my wife and I want her to have the things that she values. I want to create those things for her. I want her to feel celebrated. I want her to feel loved. I want her to feel chosen, even though that birthday party isn't the type of birthday party that I would have for myself. The key word here is it's her freaking birthday party, man. And so I think that low effort male behavior is really problematic because it doesn't take into account anybody else's experience. It doesn't take into account other people's values. It doesn't take into account other people's desires. It doesn't prioritize other people. It only has room for one priority, and that's the individual. And so as I wrestle with this phrase low effort male, I think there is a lot here for the men out there. However, my concern is that that phrase will really turn a lot of men away, which is ironic to me. Because if I think about men, if I think about what a sexy man is a man who takes accountability and responsibility for his life. And a part of that responsibility is if you're in a committed relationship, you prioritize those people in your life. You don't prioritize yourself over them. You know their priorities, you understand their priorities, you understand their values, you understand their desires, and you place those things above yours. Now, there may be times where you feel like, yeah, well, maybe I do need some time alone. I'm not saying you never do things for yourself. That's not what this message is about. But that low effort male is really consistent in always prioritizing himself. He may look like he cares about other people, but he cares about other people in so much that it benefits him. He cares about other people in so much that his needs go met, not unmet. And I think that's really problematic in relationships because what it leaves the other person carrying is a lot of that emotional weight and emotional load. And this is really the work that Heather and I are building with Unmasking Shame that I'm so excited about, is it really shines a light on the hidden dynamics that show up in relationships where shame is weaponized, where one individual exudes a minimal effort in service of the other person, and the other person ends up carrying all of the accountability, responsibility, emotional load. And really, they're the one that is responsible for the emotional weight and healing of the whole system. That doesn't seem fair to me. And this idea of fairness is something that's been coming up in my home a lot recently. My two oldest kids, they're 6 and 4, and so they're at this age where fairness is something that they're acutely aware of and hypersensitive to. Now, they're 2 years apart, and so there are definitely differences in what each are one capable of doing, just with size, maturity, strength, those types of things. There's also appropriateness levels to what they're able to do and what they're able to handle. Even though they might see their sibling doing something, they're maybe not at an age or at a place where they can do it, or admittedly where me and my wife are comfortable with them doing it. And my son in particular, my oldest, is definitely clamoring for some more autonomy. And so we've started to give him boundaries for bike riding, where he can just go and bike around the neighborhood on his own. And this has elicited a really strong reaction with my 4-year-old daughter, who sees this and feels like it's unfair. And she's not wrong if we're applying fairness just simply under the context of this person gets to do something that I don't, sure, it's not fair. Now, she doesn't understand that there are differences in ages. She doesn't understand the safety piece. She also doesn't understand the fact that our oldest is kind of naturally more responsible. He follows the rules, and she likes to break the rules. I love that about her, honestly. She's a lot like me, and it puts into question some of the safety that we would be putting her at risk if we were to allow her to go and do these things on her own. And if they were to go together, that puts a lot of responsibility on my oldest to manage and monitor his younger sister, which he is not responsible for. But fairness is a piece here that I think gets applied to adult relationships rather than equity. Meaning, like, both parties, both partners probably do different things. Me and my wife do different things. I work, my wife stays at home. Some people would call that a traditional marriage. However, my wife and I both have a say. We both have a voice. We both have a vote, and our votes are not, one vote doesn't have more power or weight than the other. But we communicate, we have this dialogue, we have this dynamic because we value each other, we value each other's opinions, and we want to understand. Admittedly, if I want to do something, I'm going to have a strong opinion about it because I want that. But I'm not going to let my wanting override my wife's perspective. So I am responsible for managing that want, for balancing that want out, for understanding that I know I want this and she may not want it the same way. So it's not my job to convince her. It's just my job to articulate what's important to me. The other day we were talking about our plans for getting out of town for the weekend, and I play hockey on Thursday nights. I love hockey. It's one of my favorite activities. I love just an hour and 15 minutes to just detach from life very intentionally, to exercise, to play, to have fun, to compete, to be physical. I really value it. And over the last few months, I have missed a lot of hockey and chosen to skip a lot of hockey in support of other things in our lives. Now, I will admit I felt entitled to skate last Thursday. There was this feeling of like, I've chosen to sacrifice and not do this, therefore I deserve to play. And in an effort to not make a decision out of that entitlement, I went to my wife and I shared with her that I'd like to play hockey. I'd like to skate. But it wasn't enough for me to just want something. I needed it and I deserved it. And so out of my own entitlement that I didn't do enough work around, instead of just saying, hey, I would really value skating tonight, it would mean a lot to me, I said, I skipped a lot. I committed to this and I have missed a lot of these and they're depending on me. And so instead of just communicating what I valued and what I wanted, I built a case for something that she couldn't reject, therefore entitling me to that, what I wanted and desired, instead of just being vulnerable and honest with my wife and saying, hey, I know we usually get out of town on Thursday nights when we leave. I would really value skating. That would mean a lot to me. And allowing room for dialogue, allowing room for my wife to communicate what she thinks, what she feels. I pinned her into a corner to not be able to deny me that which I deserved by placing all that responsibility on her to bless me playing hockey and using a bunch of people that are not a part of my relationship as my justification. I don't want to let the guys down. Now that's low effort male behavior, in my opinion. And so I'm accountable to that. So when that low effort shows up, what's different is I view that as a rupture in a relationship. So when I realized that, and I have to give credit to this phrase of low effort male behavior being slapped with, feeling like it's being slapped in my face at times, even though I know that's not what's happening. I went to my wife the next day and I said, hey, I got to be honest with you. I used this and communicated this in a way that is not how I want to operate with you. What I was doing was essentially acting entitled, and that's shitty. I wanted to play hockey and I really valued hockey, and I missed an opportunity to let you know what this thing does for me emotionally and on an emotional level. I missed an opportunity to connect with my wife, to let her see a part of me that I really value, not to say, you know, I love hockey, but to say, here's what my love of hockey does for me individually. Here's what it affords me. Here's what it does to me emotionally. Here are the things that I really value about it. But I also have to do that willingly. Not willingly isn't the right word, but I need to be able to do that and let go of the outcome of being able to play, because I'm not entitled to it. I have responsibilities. I have 3 kids. I have a wife. I have a business. I have other responsibilities and commitments. And so all of this stuff has to work together, and my partner can be a partner or she can be a parent. And if I show up in that low effort male attitude and behavior, I'm putting her into the parent role and I get to be the kid. And she is all responsible and totally accountable for not just herself, but for me. And by the way, she's probably also thinking about our kids and our children and what the impact is going to be on them, while I'm just sitting there thinking about what I want. Similar to what my 4-year-old wants when she sees her brother go off and bike on his own. She wants to be able to do the same thing. Now, that's appropriate for a 4-year-old. I would argue it's not appropriate for a man my age who's married and has 3 kids. It's not healthy. And so I'm going to keep talking about this idea of low effort male behavior because I don't want to mince words. I want to just call a spade what it is. Because I think that is actually what a sexy man is a man who's able to look at his life and look at his actions and acknowledge the ways in which he shows up like a child. A way in which he shows up that puts all the responsibility and accountability on his wife. Not to eliminate those behaviors. I'd love if they were gone. However, I'm a human being and I know they're going to show up. So what I can at least do at a bare minimum is be accountable to it and then work on changing it. And so over time, my hope is that it continues to be less and less, which I've experienced in my life, yet it still shows up. And I'm responsible for when it shows up. It's not my wife's job to point it out in me. It's not my wife's job to come to me and say, hey, you seemed really entitled there. It's my job to come to her and say, hey, I'm being entitled. I'm acting like a 4-year-old. And that's not okay with me. And I'm going to go do my work to figure out what's going on with me so that I'm not putting you in those positions again.